What's going on, everybody? It's your boy C-Zar, and in this video, I'd like to talk about some things that are very interesting when it comes to trading and investing. These things can impact your emotional output, your psychology whenever it comes to making good and bad decisions. And if you know how to look for them, if you know how to react whenever these kind of events or shifts in the market take place, you'll be better prepared for them in the future. Now, a good goal to have by the end of this video for me would be that a lot of you can take what you learn here and use that to your advantage. But the primary goal of this video is that you can at least use it to avoid a disadvantage. If that sounds good to you, hit the like button, subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and let's get into it. Ideally, you can use for both. Avoid the disadvantage, use it for an advantage, but let's get into it, okay? The first thing that I'd like to talk about in this video pertains to ETFs, because there are going to be a lot of crypto ETFs that come out between now and the end of the year, right? We've had that basket of ETFs. It was GDLC from Grayscale, where you had all the cryptos that are in the United States Crypto Strategic Reserve, all listed in one basket. It was an ETP, ETF, whatever, all listed, and it's believed, experts around the space believe that this is going to pave the path forward for a lot of various cryptos to have ETFs listed, okay? So on that note, let's kind of go over some things that I think are very interesting here whenever it comes to these ETF listings. Bitcoin being the first crypto that ever had an ETF listing, it actually had the first spot ETF listing for Bitcoin was on the 11th. And another thing too, actually, before we get too much further, it's important to mention that these ETFs have to be, that they're more significant for whatever reason when they are listed in the United States. And I don't think it's for whatever reason. I think the United States has a broader market. There's more capital entering and exiting. There's more liquidity there. So I think whenever the United States has an ETF versus other countries that have ETFs approved, the markets react a little bit more dynamically, okay? So the ETF for Bitcoin that was first approved was on the 11th of January. And I remember at the top we were saying we're going to drop here, right? Everybody's like, the ETF got approved. I didn't think the ETF would get approved. I really didn't think that we'd get it because, well, for the most part, it never has been approved. So this is the very first time that we were proven wrong. Every time before this, all the ETF approvals that were being proposed, you just guessed that it wouldn't get approved and you'd be right. But up until this point here, man, I mean, there were so many times that the ETFs were supposed to get approved, 90% approval rate, and they just didn't get approved. But here I was proven wrong. However, we still called for the price to go down. Now, this wasn't a dramatic shift. It was semi-dramatic, but nonetheless, you can see that on that day, we clearly had a bit of a drop-off. We continued to rally afterwards, and if we zoom out a little bit more, you can see that clearly, this cycle has been rather robust since this ETF listing, right? We've continued to do nothing but grow. Some moments of stagnation, of course, but relatively just growing nonstop. And Bitcoin, the Bitcoin ETFs that did come out broke a lot of records. I think they broke basically every record in the book whenever it came to net inflows in the first week, in the first month, and in the first year. Just crazy things that we've never seen before. But nevertheless, Bitcoin, the Mac Daddy here, from a high to a low, dropped about 21% after it had its first ETF, right? We see here the first spot Bitcoin ETF was listed on January 11th, 2024. For Ethereum, whenever the first spot Ethereum ETF was listed, it was July 23rd, 2024. Let's look at that. Well, July 23rd was right here. Now, you weren't in the midst of an uptrend. You didn't keep moving up afterwards, but what happened after that, July 23rd, 2024, that was this date here, okay? July 23rd right here. It was the day after you found a relative high, and then immediately afterwards you dropped a total of about 40%, you guys. 40% from July 23rd to August 5th. Now, on the bright side with both of these moves, regardless of the size, they happened very swiftly. They happened very fast, and they were over just as fast as they came, right? We look at Ethereum and Bitcoin here, significant drops, but coincidentally, right at the point where this very bullish news happened. And the thing that I'm trying to promote here is that the price went up beforehand and sold afterwards. There's a saying in this space, in the crypto space and in the stock world, and it is buy the hype, sell the news, right? The hype was that the ETF would get listed. The news was that it did list, that it would get approved, and that it got listed. So then you sell the news, right? The hype was that there would be an Ethereum ETF, and the price was pumping because of that. Once the ETF listed, once the news came, you sell the news. Flawless, right? Absolutely flawless. Dogecoin and XRP have both recently had ETFs approved, right? Rex Osprey Doge ETFs right here listed on the 18th, and same thing, Rex Osprey XRP ETF listed on the 18th as well. Now, this can go against some of the price predictions I've had, and I'm going to have to cover these coins before things really take off, but I would very much expect that if Bitcoin and Ethereum were not safe from these drops, Dogecoin and XRP are not going to be safe either. They're probably going to see a little bit of chaos over the coming days, and that makes sense. Why? Right? Buy the hype, sell the news. Now, maybe you were aware that these ETFs would get approved, maybe you weren't, but at least we're aware of the news right now. And the news came out that these ETFs got approved. We've been moving down since then, and I would assume that this move is not done for Dogecoin yet, nor would it be done for XRP. I was assuming that XRP would kind of hold support in this range, but it's looking like we might come down a little bit lower. I don't think we're going to break out to lower lows. I don't think we're going to get a 40% drop on either of these coins. I think we're in too bullish of a phase of the markets, but understand, yet again, sell the news events at the exact top. The 18th here at this relative, well, not at the exact top, but at the relative top here. Same thing with XRP right here. Not at the exact top, but still right around the top of this area. You buy the hype, and then the ETF got approved, and now you're selling the news. You buy the hype, the ETF gets approved, and you're selling the news, right? That's kind of how it happens. And this, I think, ties well into something else that I want to talk about, which is literally the news, which is how it impacts your psychology and emotional well-being. And as we progress further into this market, you guys, you have to be aware the news is only going to get more and more bullish, okay? Typically, when we get bullish news, it is a sell the news event. But as we get to this end of cycle mania phase, you're going to hear good news, you're going to hear bad news, and it's not really going to impact the price, right? I mean, maybe it's going to add to the price, but the price is just going to continue to rally. Okay, with these ETFs, I assume there's going to be a little bit of a drawback. For various cryptos that have ETFs listed, I'm assuming there's going to be little bits of drawbacks as well. But nothing that's going to hold us up for months at a time, right? Days at a time, maybe a week or two at a time, and then we continue to rally, right? You saw it with Bitcoin and Ethereum. They saw their drops pretty fast. Bitcoin recovered very fast afterwards. Ethereum kind of stagnated, but tomato, whatever, right? I think that we're in a very bullish position right now throughout the whole crypto ecosystem, regardless of what comes to pass over the coming days for XRP and Dogecoin or any other cryptos that get ETFs approved. It'll be to the downside, but then we will probably recover, likely going into the end of this month, if not certainly in October, and going into the end of the year, we're definitely going to be rallying to dramatically higher prices across the board. And as we continue to rally, there's going to be better and better stories, better narratives coming out. You're going to hear people, we're already hearing people right now saying Bitcoin's going to go to $1 million. It's going to go to $700,000. Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock, was talking about how Bitcoin is going to go to $700,000 this cycle, right? The reason why these numbers are primed, right? The reason why these numbers come out and these what's the word I want to use here? Intelligent people who have experience in the world of finance, who know what they're doing. The reason why they talk about numbers like 700,000 this cycle, $1 million this cycle, Bitcoin could go to $1.5 million by the end of the cycle. They talk about these high numbers is to prime you psychologically, so that when we actually get to the top cycle number, which I think is going to be $500,000, or maybe even less than that, or maybe a little bit more than that, but I don't think we're going to break $1 million. I doubt we hit $700,000 by the end of the cycle. But the reason why they say these numbers is to prime you, is so that you are not selling the top. Because if the people who hold the most Bitcoin in the world are truthfully telling you and the whole world where they believe the price is going to go by the end of this cycle, that's going to hurt their capabilities to sell or to profit or to make any decisions that can benefit them, to where they sell to retail at the top and then they buy back at the low. Because how are they going to sell to retail if retail's selling as well, right? Unless we're going through a super cycle and they're trying to cheap us out, get us to sell our Bitcoin so that the market just keeps rallying. But nothing happens, nothing moves in a straight line like that, right? There are cycles, there is cyclicality to these markets, and a lot of people feel validated in the sense that this bull market has run longer than any other bull market so far. But the thing is, right translated cycles happen in stocks, have happened in markets all over the world. Left translated bear markets, which are much more common in bear markets, left translated, which means they're shorter, happen oftentimes in bear markets. I think we're getting set up for a right translated bull market, a left translated bear market, but we're still playing off these 4-year cycles. Why? Because regardless of the amount of circulating supply there is for Bitcoin, regardless of the amount of uncirculating supply that's remained to be mined, we're still basing our total supply that's being injected in the markets every day being cut in half every 4 years. there's going to be some kind of dynamic that's played out every 4 years because of this. Supply and demand are fundamental laws of physics when it comes to any economy, whenever it comes to any market. And the reality is the supply is getting cut in half. That's being injected into the markets every day in half every 4 years. There's going to be some kind of 4-year dynamic. So again, getting back, I feel like I had to complete that thought just to get back to the idea that when we get to the end of the cycle and you're hearing everybody say, we're going to 700K, we're going to $1 million, Bitcoin's going to be at $2 million, it's not going to stop there, we're going to be at $10 million by the end of 2026. It's not too late to get in. And they're throwing these outlandish numbers or numbers that are further than where we are. When we're sitting at 400K and you're hearing these numbers, we'll pump up a little bit. We'll go from 400K to 500K like that, and that'll validate these people because we're going to make a move up so fast. But at that point, we're at peak euphoria. Everybody's looking to the sky. Their feet are off the ground, and they're not touching grass, and they're not based in reality. And that happens every cycle, right? Last cycle, let's go back to 2 cycles ago. Back when we stopped at 20K, it was December. I remember. It was December, and I remember. I was a poet, and I didn't know it. In December, the hot topic of discussion there is that Bitcoin was going to $50,000. That was all the headlines said. Bitcoin is going to $50,000, right? So a lot of people bought in at 20K, right? I bought in at 18K. I bought my first Bitcoins a lot lower than that, but I sold them. It doesn't matter. Who cares, right? It's not worth talking about. But just for my first experience buying Bitcoin, it wasn't there. But I put a heavy investment. That was my heaviest investment. I put it in at 18K because I was like, well, damn, I missed out, on a lot of the party already. I'm just going to put in $5,000 right now. That was a lot of money to me back then. That was all the money that I had saved up. I was living in my mom's. I was a teenager, and I put in $5,000 at the $18,000 price, and then just all the way down. Right, 20K was where the price went to. The headlines were calling for $50,000. Right, again, to prime the retail investor, the dumb money, to put their money in there because they're going to make some money. Meanwhile, the top dogs, the big wallets, the whales, they're selling, right? So Larry Fink, Brad Garlinghouse, whoever it is, Arthur Hayes. Well, Arthur Hayes thinks it's going to go to 250K. I think we're going to go way higher than 250K. I do think we'll double that. But whatever their names are, whatever they're calling for, these big, large institutional value holders of Bitcoin, when they tell you that the price is going to be dramatically higher than it currently is, whenever everybody's euphoric, we're getting good news after good news and we keep moving up, understand that we're at that top point and that it's probably time to sell. I really do think we'll be at $500,000 by the end of the cycle. You're going to hear it. You're going to hear a lot of people right now, they're starting to come out of the woodworks, but as the cycle continues to progress, people are going to be louder and more erratic with these crazy calls of Bitcoin hitting prices that it just won't achieve this cycle. And there will be cycles, right? They're going to come up with all their logical, euphoric reasons for why it's going to happen. But I'm telling you, this cycle is different. It 100% is different. But there is still some seasonality, and there is going to be some seasonality. Just because it's tame doesn't mean it's absolved of having a bear market. We will have a bear market. And all that's just a rounded thought back to exactly what we were talking about with the ETFs, to what we're talking about, what we will see whenever it comes to the end of the cycle, is that you need to keep your mind, you need to keep yourself grounded. Okay, if you're basing your price predictions off of the news, if you're hearing, oh, an ETF got approved today, I'm going to buy because of that, you're screwed, right? If you hear somebody, we just moved up from $400,000 to $100,000 or $500,000 in like a week or 2 weeks or however quick it is that we make that move, which it's probably going to be very fast at the end of the cycle here, you guys. We have blow off tops for a reason. I mean, it's to catch that hype euphoria, and then we move up $100,000 in like a week or two. What took us all our lives to get to $100,000, it took literally over like 10 years to get to $100,000, or I guess at that point it would have been like 14 years to get to $100,000. We're going to do that in like a week or two at the end of the cycle. We're going to go from like 400K to 500K like that. Mark my words. And when we do that, and people are calling for us to continue up to $1 million or more than that, that's how you know we're at the high. And that news, all the media, when it's at prime euphoria, there should be a little alarm going off in your head saying, hold up now, wait a second. Wait a second. Money is not this easy to come by, right? Not on a multi-trillion-dollar asset, right? That doesn't make any sense. I feel like I'm running out of things to say, so I'll probably just end it there. But again, the main thought here is really based in the essence of that classic saying, which is buy the hype, sell the news. When you hear the hype, you buy it up, right? There's hype right now that Bitcoin's going to go to 250K, 700K, $1 million. Buy the hype. And then once the news comes out, once all the good news comes out at the end, that might be the time to sell. And of course, we're going to use technical analysis. We're not just going to use news. We're going to use technicals to tell us what we think about the price and where we think it's going to go off. There are some very key indicators that we watch that have been pinpoint accurate every single cycle. We're going to use those here as the months progress, and I'll hold your guys' hand on that. So if that sounds good, just keep following along. We'll talk about this stuff as the months go by. I very much expect that the end of the market cycle is going to happen in April or May of 2026 for Bitcoin and for altcoins. So I got nothing else. If you guys heard a scream, it sounds like my daughter might have just hurt herself. I don't know. I'm going to go check on her. So hit the like button, subscribe, take care of yourselves. Bye bye.